is a presentation of the iRacing Esports Network.
If a racetrack could talk, Daytona International Speedway would have stories to last a lifetime. The 31-degree banking that lines the 2.5-mile oval is an annual favourite for the Monster Energy NASCAR Sprint Cup and iRacing's very own Peak Anti-Freeze series. But don't be fooled by these V8 beasts we have here tonight. These are no NASCARs, despite some arguing that they drive like one. These animals are sure to eat up the 5,729 meters of road course we have mapped out for 34 laps on what will be the first ever roval race for these V8 Supercars on the iRacing official series calendar. This may not be the Daytona 500, but ladies and gentlemen, start your engines, because here at V8 Online, live on the iRacing Esports Network, we are just getting started. Zach, when it comes to the championship, the first 5 rounds, it could be said that Jared Filsell already had one hand on this championship, and if he wasn't for some reason to pick that title up, Trans-Tasman Racing teammate Sam Blacklock would have surely been in the cat's bird seat to steal it away. But looking at the outright standings with no drop rounds, of course we are still seeing drivers with already 8 races logged into their season scores, but our current championship leader is not from Trans-Tasman Racing at all.
No, it's not. It's from Brett Loxton, and he's been doing a fantastic job in the last few rounds to really get himself up into a fighting chance of taking home the championship this season. And he is very closely followed, however, by the 2 TTR cars of Sam Blacklock, and not so closely by Jared Filsell. But if we go to our drop rounds and have a look at that, we can actually see that the championship does get flipped upside down just a little bit, with Jared Filsell having 8 rounds locked in that are very, very good so far. He's currently on top of the tables, with Sam Blacklock following very closely behind, and we can see Brett Loxton down in 5th. So Brett's been putting in some really great performances all throughout this season, and he just needs a couple more to really get himself up to that level of Filsell and Blacklock. And I'm looking forward to seeing all of these guys, with the exception of Filsell, because he's not here this evening, put a good fight towards the end of this championship to see who can take it home.
Absolutely, and there's a lot of contenders slowly beginning to creep their way into a bit of form at the moment. Of course, we saw in the AOSC another fantastic result from the Trick Sim Sport guys, and we have 2 of their cars here today. We know their setup is quick around here, and Forza Nabi is arguably going to be one of the favorites to take this race away, but he's got an incident on his first lap. He's on his second lap at the moment, has to make it count. His teammate, of course, Ross Rizzo, currently lining up in 11th, so not the result he would have wanted, but El Nabi sure to be able to put a bit of pressure on the current qualifying pole sitter in Jordan Ross, and those Synergy Sim Racing cars also hooked up with Brenton Hobson actually taking out the world record for the Holden Commodore around here. So those cars are quick, but how quick is Forza and El Nabi? This lap has to count, and he goes to the top of the timesheets. Trick Sim Sport have got this circuit tricked out, Zach.
Yeah, very nice lap there from Forzan, and possibly even the fuel that he burnt off in that first lap helped him on that second one, just gave him a 10th around the bankings at this Daytona road circuit. But they've been doing a really nice job the last few rounds as well. Forzan obviously winning last time out at Interlagos, so he's got a lot to prove that he has the talent to be at the top and stay at the top of this series. And being in championship contention as well, going to be very important for him to carry home a great result. Brett Loxton, on the other hand, sitting 6th at the moment, but we can see once again the time's very tight between the top 15 cars, with just a second going all the way back to Michael Taliancic there, and not much as we further fall off down the field. But it looks like there are a couple of cars still circulating. Michael Taliancic is on his second and final lap, as is Brenton Hobson. Now, Hobson's got one of those Synergy Sim racing cars you were talking about earlier, Bo. They've got the speed with Jordan Ross up there in second position. Maybe he can make something magic happen in this second lap with only 3/10 the margin to make up.
Well, unfortunately for him, he's a bit out of time, and it's his third lap as well. So Hobbo, he's got the world record around here, but he doesn't have pole position. That honor's going to go to Forzan Al-Nabi, who will lead the field away. 24 cars here tonight for 34 laps. Jordan Ross is going to join him on the front row of the grid, and it's going to be awesome to see Holden vs Ford launch away from a very tricky start line. Luke Harvey lines up in P number 3 with Wayne Burke in P number 4, with Corey Preston making it a top 5. Brett Loxton wants to thrust himself into championship contention from P number 6, and all he has to do is beat the driver who qualified 7th, Sam Blacklock. Brenton Hobson kicks things off from P number 8, with Brian Borg and Leon Tander your top 10.
We have Riley Blythe coming out of 11th position, followed by Ross Rizzo in P number 12. Thomas McMillan going to take out 13th position next to Chris Coxhead, who will round out your 7th row of the grid. Michael Taliancic lines up alongside Jacob Knight, and then Jamie McKnight comes in 17th position with David Kinmond company for him. Greg Sharp in 19th position, and Thomas Hins will round out your top 20. Number 2 car going to have to do a little bit of work from there, and Calvin Fuerdent, Steve Jansen, and Bart Martinovic will round out this 24-car grid. And it's a relatively short run into the first corner, Bo, but plenty of wide road for everybody to use, and a couple of people might take advantage of that as they come down into turn 1.
I don't even think the track width is going to be the biggest talking point off this start, Zach, because we're talking about a standing start on a banked circuit. So when these drivers release the clutches, if they get any wheel spin, the car is naturally going to slide the rear of the car down, and it's already going to be a very, very tricky start. So we're just getting the last few drivers lined up now. 20 more seconds to get yourself lined up on this grid. But I'm very fascinated to see how this goes, because this could be one of the most critical starts we see all season long, because it's a very tricky turn number 1, and who gets there first is going to be a very large advantage. But the revs rise, and ladies and gentlemen, we are getting ready. It's boogity, boogity, boogity. Let's go racing, and it's a very tricky start from all involved, but a great start from Forzan Al-Nabi, who does get away. John Ross trying to put pressure already, as is Luke Harvey, who dives to the inside. Can't make it work for P number 2, but they all bunch up into an ever-tightening turn. Contact with Wayne Burke and Sam Blacklock again. Oh, the 17 car, and Blacklock's the round championship leader. Another car, I think that might have been Loxton. First and second in the championship are around the 14 car as well. All kinds of chaos. Riley Blythe finds himself in the wall as well. It's all kicked off immediately, Zach.
Yeah, there was a little bit of contact further up the field there. I think that could have been with Corey Preston, I believe. We'll confirm that for you in just a moment, but that was very unfortunate for a lot of drivers there. And it was interesting, as you said, Bo, for that start. You did see a lot of cars getting down to the bottom of the circuit with the tail end of the car, but Forzan Al-Nabi has got the jump at the moment and has made it through the first section of the infield here at Daytona, and now it is time for the first of our bang sections. And I think being the leader here is going to be a little bit of a disadvantage, but we will see these guys have a large fuel tank here tonight, and the options for strategy are going to be very wide and varied. So Forzan's going to have to fend off this little train of cars that he's got behind him that have all got a nice slipstream, but he has broken away for the time being, and Luke Harvey's looking very quick, a little deep into the bus stop there. Probably one of the most critical parts about this circuit, the bus stop. Very important to get a nice clean exit, as has Jordan Ross and Forzan Al-Nabi, who has a nice gap now out the front.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what Forzan would want. He wants to break this slipstream, but that is going to be so difficult to do with this huge straight. If you want to call it a straight, of course, it's an oval as they funnel their way towards turns 1 and 2. And you can already see the slipstream effect for Wayne Burke just closing rapidly on Luke Harvey, but elects to stay in the slipstream this time around. And you can see that El Nabi had a 0.3 of a second lead at the start-finish line. By the time he got down to turn number 1, that was dramatically cut down. So unfortunately, he's got a battle pack with him for the entire rest of this race, as we expect the drivers to run quite long, as Harvey just had a little bit of a look on John Ross, who didn't get the optimal line, checks him up, and Wayne Burke also gets into the action, as does Corey Preston. So if he was involved in that first corner incident just a little bit, it doesn't seem to have affected his confidence too much. Brenton Hobson runs in, you'll never guess what position, and he's got a bit of clean air to Thomas McMillan behind. And Thomas has quite a fair bit of damage to his car. And on an oval that is so long and slipstream opportunities that are so big around this circuit, damage is so tough for a driver to deal with at this point, Zach.
Yeah, absolutely. That aerodynamic effect, it just puts so much extra drag on the car and really loses you quite a bit of top-end speed at the end of the oval section. And it's really important if you want to be trying to make any overtakes or having to defend from someone that has a slipstream as well. I did notice actually that Brenton Hobson, one of our Synergy Sim racing cars, he has a little bit of that damage on the nose of his car as well. So having a little bit of contact on that first lap too. And he's got a big gap up to the cars ahead of him. But looking up to the cars ahead, Wayne Burke has a nice run here on Luke Harvey and is trying to just run a little bit of that outside line. He doesn't want to stay too tucked up behind Luke to ruin his run as they come down to the start-finish line now. So now Wayne pulls to the outside. He's got a little more ground to cover, but that top-end speed looks like he's just decided to back out of this for the time being. And he's going to go for a bit of an over-under, actually pull a bit of a fake on Luke Harvey, and has done a very nice job to get up the inside and clear Luke as they come through turn number 2 and into 3 here. So very nice fake out there from Wayne Burke. He moves himself up into 3rd position and has still got enough of a gap that he can still stay in that slipstream of the car of Jordan Ross up ahead.
Absolutely, and that's critical for him, of course, because he wants to be able to get onto the back of his teammate, John Ross, who is right underneath the rear wing of Forzan Nabi. One driver that's not having too much luck is Thomas McMillan, who continues to fall back a little bit with that damage, and he's got a huge train behind, spanning all the way back to just about Jay McKnight in P number 13. So this is a very angry battle pack at the moment, and as you'll see, as they fire their way onto the straight, these positions will chop and change quite a lot with drivers with different levels of damage, different strategies as well. Of course, you mentioned that even though we do have a 100% fuel tank here tonight, you will have to take a pit stop at some point. You can't run it all the way to the end. So fuel saving is going to be a big factor, especially when we consider how important pit lane is here, because it is not an easy pit road entrance, Zach.
No, especially in these V8 Supercars, which, I mean, they've got good braking performance, but they're definitely not easy to brake from an extremely high speed. They can be very sketchy, and it is a little bit of a turn as you're coming into the pit lane as well. So almost having to do a bit of a trail brake, but you can kind of straighten it up and slow it down pretty quickly. But nonetheless, it is very, very difficult to do. And it is going to be critical for these guys as well to decide when they want to come in, because as we said, they have a full tank, but that really opens it up to, I mean, they could come in as early as lap 6, or they could probably come in as late as lap, I think, 28 or so is when we would expect them to have expired all of that racing fuel from their tanks. So quite a wide variance for guys here. So some people who are maybe stuck out of the draft might consider changing tires early and trying to make up a bit of that gap in the early part of the race so that when people pit later, they can actually tag on the back of the train and recover a bit of a position. So it will be very interesting to see how that all goes. But up at the front, it is nose to tail. Forzan Nabi not able to break away from Jordan Ross. And now Wayne Burke is tucked in very intently underneath his Synergy Sim Racing partner there in Jordan.
Yeah, and that's going to be crucial for them because they can afford to work together a little bit now. And whether that means that Jordan Ross just pushes a bit harder, tries to get past Forzan Nabi, and then maybe slow him down a little bit whilst Wayne Burke is able just to fuel save the entire time and just get that benefit. We'll have to wait and see what kind of orders or help they might have there at Synergy Sim Racing, but at the moment it's just Forza and El Nabi for Trick Sim Sport, all by his lonesome with no help at all. And he does have to be a little bit careful. I'm noticing he's getting into the grass quite a lot, so he doesn't want to rack up too many incident points, because he's clearly trying to get the best exit out of the bus stop he can to limit getting past into turn number 1, but doing a very nice job out in front at the moment. But the drivers behind not so fortunate, including Thomas McMillan, who was being put under pressure by Ross Rizzo through the infield, but there's no defending when it comes to the oval. You can try and park it on the inside, as McMillan has done, but Rizzo's so much more straight line speed, and with the speed McMillan's got, I don't think Jacob Knight's going to go for a move up the inside. He might think about it, but doesn't commit to it. But McMillan is going to be falling back so quickly, and you'd have to think that perhaps he calls for an early pit stop or so, just to get a little bit of damage fixed.
Yeah, well, I don't know if they're going to be able to whack that panel back on during the pit stop, but that's what we were talking about before. Ross Rizzo just having so much more of an effect with that slipstream, but he's made a bit of a mistake coming through the International Horseshoe, and McMillan's been able to get that one back very quickly. So very unfortunate there for Ross Rizzo, and now he's going to get a little bit of a bump as well from Jacob Knight as they're coming into turn number 5 there, and getting a little bit of a hurry up from Jacob Knight there. But Thomas McMillan, I feel he's just going to lose this position again because of that aerodynamic drag caused by that missing panel there. And him, and also I think Brenton Hobson, maybe not in the early stages of this race, like within the next 5 laps, but possibly those two guys could be the guys to bite the bullet and pit a little bit earlier than everyone else to just try and repair a little bit of that damage. But also it seems like for Hobbo, if he can get on those fresh tires and even make up 3 or 4 seconds to the car ahead, he might be able to then draft up onto the back of the leading pack with assistance from that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there, but I would say that those two guys, tactically, I think they should pull the pin first, but we will have to see what happens as Rizzo now goes once again for the outside of Thomas McMillan and carrying some monumental speed, hitting 300 kilometers an hour as he comes over the line. Does Ross Rizzo, very committed and late on the brakes, not going to let McMillan come up the inside. But Brian Borg just making a little bit of a mistake ahead up the road, and he's got Leon Tander fresh on his heels as well, and doing a good job to keep it up in that 8th position there with that train of cars behind. That little fight between McMillan and Rizzo there has really allowed Borg and Tander to just break away a little bit, and they'll be looking to try and catch up to Brenton Hobson, who's up in 6th up ahead.
Yeah, and they're doing a very good job of that last time around. A 44.9 for Borgie, whereas Brenton Hobson only a 45.3. So we know how quick Brenton Hobson can be, but he's just not getting any assistance from a draft with how far behind he is. And even though Borg is about a second behind at the moment, that is still enough to punch a hole in the air and just get a bit of a benefit on the oval, which is so long here. So you really do pick up so much more pace the entire way around. So Borg is benefiting from that. It's just going to get drawn closer and closer to Hobbo over the next few laps. And I would honestly say in the next 4 or 5 laps, that is Brenton Hobson's going to have a fair bit of company from Brian Borg and Leon Tander, of course, who also drives for Synergy Sim Racing. And I think also the same paint scheme as well. So they're well and truly teammates at Synergy Sim Racing. But we'll wait and see, as the 2 Synergy Sim Racing cars we really need to focus on are Jordan Ross and Wayne Burke, who continue just to hound Forza and El Nabi just a little bit. And Jordan's slowly been getting closer and closer every single lap. He's been just millimeter by millimeter getting back to the bumper. Another 200th slopped up on that lap. Strong under brakes into turn 1 as well, but just not able to get close enough at the moment, and well and truly trying to play the strategy card. But that has allowed Luke Harvey back into this train, who did fall off, but now Corey Preston needs to get into a hurry because he's just about lost the slipstream to Luke Harvey.
Yeah, he's pretty much right on the cusp of falling off that, so he's just going to have to, I mean, all you really need to do is make sure that you carry a little bit of speed through this infield section and make sure that you nail the bus stop, and you're kind of set so long as you're within a second of the car ahead. So Corey just needs to, whoa, and actually El Nabi just gets a bump from Jordan Ross there, a big bump actually, as they're coming through the horseshoe. And now El Nabi's got a little bit of a rub mark on his rear bumper there. be interesting to see if that has any difference to his top end speed, and if Jordan and Wayne can start hounding him a little more here. But Jordan Ross, just two different lines coming through that international horseshoe, and both of them meeting in the middle. Lucky El Nabi able to keep that car under control. But I've been looking at these Synergy Sim Racing guys and seeing if they've been doing a little fuel saving. Doesn't seem as if they are compared to El Nabi, but if they can do just a little bit, they could just sit behind him until the pit stops and jump him there. But we'll have to see how we go.
Yeah, we absolutely will, but I do just want to quickly touch on a few things. A lot of drivers really struggling with brakes at the moment. Luke Harvey locks the brakes into the horseshoe, lost the spot to Corey Preston. He's trying to fight it back at the moment, side by side down the oval. And also just to touch on Brenton Hobson, another driver to lock up, and he lost the 2 spots to Tander and Borg as well, as Preston and Harvey side by side, and Preston lets that one go very easily, playing it very cautious at the moment. But a lot of drivers really trying to fight it out at the moment, as Forza now Nabi sideways out of turn number 1, fighting for traction at the moment and not finding any, which is a very tough corner because the car is constantly loaded. But you can see that Jordan Ross has the gun loaded, fired at the back of the Trick Sim Sport car because he is ready to pounce at any moment. And I think that if you said that they weren't fuel saving, Zach, that I think that very well could be 1 or 2 more laps until we really see shots fired.
Yeah, possibly. I just went on board with...
El Nabi a bit wide.
He is a little bit wide. I'm actually under the impression now that these guys are just holding station. That Luke's made a mistake and he's dropped off a little bit as well, which has given them a nicer gap than they had before. But as they were coming around the last bend up towards the start-finish line, Jordan and Wayne, they could have easily overtaken Forzan as they came into turn 1, but both of them backed off the gas as they were coming just past the pit lane and electing not to use that overspeed. They could have done it easily. So I think these guys are just holding station right now and maybe just saving a little. They're not obviously saving fuel, but I think that they're saving enough that they're going to be able to do something in the pits here. So I think that these guys are just going to wait and see if they can wear Forzan down and make him use all that fuel, although he is very good on fuel. So it's going to be very interesting when it comes to pit time. See here, I think Jordan quite easily right now, if he had kept it in the gas, he would have passed, but he decided to just let off the throttle a little bit.
Oh, 3 wide! 3 wide! Tanzer, Bork and Hobson just about tried it into turn number 1 and still side by side into turn number 1. Both so committed on the brakes. Are they all going to hold it up? Well, they hold on to the circuit, but not the apex. And they're going to head into towards turn number 3 as well, as it's 4 wide in the background as well. McMillan involved, as is Cox and one driver off all kinds of sideways. And that's Thomas Hint on his return to V8 Supercars Strength of Field Racing after a bit of a break, not having any luck. Jacob Knight just makes a bit of a mistake just in front, but Hinsey not able to capitalize. But if the leaders at the front are gonna play it safe, Zach, I don't think the midfield is.
Yeah, well, they've got a lot more around them going on, and they've got other cars that they want to break away with. So the time to make a move is now. And yeah, Thomas Hins just getting left out to dry as he was trying to come through the pack there. But Ross Rizzo is now at the back of the pack of this little train, led by Brian Borg now, who's gotten past Hobson, as we saw before. And I wonder if Hobo will allow his teammate in Leon Tander through as well, given that Leon doesn't appear to be wearing any damage. Or will Hobo's coming back? He looks like he's got a strong car when he has a bit of a slipstream, so he might fight it out with Borgie over these next few and see if he can get his teammate leapfrogged up to the front of this train and follow him. We'll have to see.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of strategy that could potentially play out, but we will have to wait and see if there is any inter-team help from one another, as we are seeing a few drivers who were involved in those opening few lap crashes actually back out on circuit, which is great to see. That includes Sam Blacklock, Calvin Fuadant, and Michael Talianci. So good to see drivers who are involved in a bit of an incident able to get back out on track and keep the participation high, which is what we love to see here. And always good to see drivers in the spirit. But out front, it's still Forza Al Nabi from John Ross and Wayne Burke, and it's still as they were. So no sheep stations being created just yet between those two, but it might just be as Corey Preston is back onto the heels of Lukabi as McMillan goes for a move up the inside of Chris Coxhead. Still a side-by-side, a bit of traction issues for Coxhead, very close, almost knocking the mirrors off each other's car as they head to an extremely fast kink, which you don't want to go side-by-side with, and McMillan decides to play a little bit more safe. Not playing it safe now, into the back of Coxhead, forces him wide, misses the apex, tries to get an undercut, and both off. McKnight says thank you very much. So does the LeBlanc car. Hinsey goes through as well. They've lost each other so much more spots, and I said McMillan was playing it safe, but in the end, he just went for a gap that was never there.
Yeah, he was very ambitious there. If he had been able to pull it up, it would have been a nice move, but unfortunately, Coxhead had to turn in eventually, and just clipping the rear of McMillan's car there, not allowing his car to rotate. And that's, you know, that's racing. That's good, hard racing. But unfortunately for those two guys, it hasn't paid off this time. And now Coxhead's going to have to do a bit of work to get himself back up to the head of this train. We saw him having a fantastic battle last week, lap after lap with Riley Blythe. So hopefully he'll be able to use some of the racecraft that he learned last time out to progress himself through the field, unlike what's just happened with him and McMillan. So he's luckily still in the slipstream there, and just up ahead of them, Knight and McKnight. They're going to go for it into turn number one, it would seem. Knight just holding on the back of McKnight very closely there. Bump drafting a little bit, pulls out to the outside line, but breaks very early. Might go cut back in under, but McKnight covers it off. And that was Hobson. Hobson spun into turn one, who's now going to rejoin right next to Greg Sharp there. He's going to have to back out as well, because Sharp has to get through the corner, and Hobbo going to think Sharp might have let him through there, knowing that Hobbo's a way quicker car, but Hobbo just a little bit of red mist there, having a bit of trouble putting down the traction, but that move's done now, and he's got to focus on catching the group ahead of him, which is Coxhead and the rest. And McMillan again down the inside of the International Horseshoe, trying to go up the inside of David Kinman. This time he is able to pull it up, but he's not able to let it go on the exit. He does a bit of a half spin there and just managing to recover that. But McMillan is now almost, in fact, he's pretty much last of the people on the lead lap now, and he's got a lot to do.
Absolutely, and the car does not look pretty, so McMillan's chances might be all but done, but it's not over between the two Knights, McKnight and Knight, side by side once again. But I just quickly wanted to touch on what actually happened to Brenton Hobson. It was contact with his teammate, unbelievably. So the two Synergy Sim Racing cars managing to make contact, but we also have another change of positions, because Wayne Burke is now the lead Synergy Sim Racing car in this field. So when it goes wrong for one Synergy Sim Racing car in Brenton Hobson, it begins to go right for Wayne Burke, and he's been behind his teammate for a long time in this race, so there's plenty of fuel available in that number 4 car. Is this potentially go time, Zach?
Yeah, I think maybe Jordan just gave him the position there, but we have a couple of cars going 2 by 2 by 2 down into turn number 1 here. McKnight, Knight, Coxhead, and Hins there, all doing a bit of bump drafting. That was some NASCAR style stuff down into turn 1. Knight's been hung out to dry. He's going to have to go on the grass. Hinsey going to look around the outside, or Knight's going to try and look up the inside, and Cox had a little bit of a rub there, and that's going to check everyone up massively. Now, I think that's Hobbo is going to try go 4 wide down into the turn number 4. That's going to be tough, boys. Hobbo going around the outside and inside for the International Horseshoe. Fantastic job, but he's going to go to the back, and Cox had a big crash into the back of him there, but everyone managing to keep it on the straight bits. And now Hins ducking and diving, looking away past Hobson as well, who runs very deep into turn number 6, and he's going to have to now defend the inside, or he's going to have to give up the inside to Thomas Hins, who's had some great traction coming out. And now McKnight has really been able to break away from this pack. Coxhead managed to go through as well, and we're going to have some more 2x2 action as we come down into the bus stop. Hobson's going to have to let go the position to Jacob Knight there. He gets very close to Hinsey. Knight running a little deep. Hobbo's going to have to get some nice exit speed coming out of the bus stop there, which he does. And he's going to have to try and do it down into turn number 1 with a bit of slipstream, I think.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see what he can do, but it might be a little bit tough. Not looks like he's gaining too much at the moment. So we'll wait and see as there's another position change as Ross Rizzo goes around the outside into turn number 1 of Brian Borg. And Leon Tander was thinking about it for just a moment, not able to do it though. As we do have one of our first drivers coming onto pit road, which is David Kinman. So he's electing to go for an undercut, and we'll watch him with interest as Jacob Knight now finds his way past Brenton Hobson, who has another disaster into turn number 1. So Hobbo not having any luck, having to go defensive against Greg Sharp as well, as Knight now fires it up the inside of Hinsey. They're going to go side by side, but it looks like Knight just has so much more traction, tries to cover it off. Hinsey just about still there. Will he brave it into the kink? No. Backs out of it. So Jacob Knight gets that position sold. And he'll move up as Brenton Hobbs has a big moment in the background. All kinds of wiggling. And he has managed to do a very impressive save there to keep it out of the tyre wall. But that is even more positions lost. And he was fighting for a 6th. Now it's a 6th with a 1 in front of it, 16th.
Yeah, I think now is the time to pit Hobbo, because that car does not look like it is performing well at all. He's got either massive heat issues with those rear tires, or they're just gone because he doesn't seem to have any traction through that infield section whatsoever, and he has lost a monumental amount of positions because of that. Kudos for pulling it up though. That was a good job to keep it out of the barrier. Very heads up thinking. But this little pack up ahead of him, McKnight, Coxhead and Knight, and Hins on the tail end of this as well. We might see a little bit more action, but our race leader in the meantime, Forzan El Nabi, has hit the pit lane. So we'll have to watch his pit time now, because this will kind of set the precedent for most of the other cars. David Kinman, who came in on the last lap. Oh, we just had Knight almost spinning Coxhead on the straight there as though doing a bit of bump drafting into turn 1. But Kinman with a 38-second stop. So, and you'll probably have to add a couple of seconds to that for the pit exit as well. So probably about 43 seconds is the gap you need for a pit stop. And El Nabi's actually stopped slightly longer than David Kinman, though. So he's actually stopped a second longer than Kinman there, which could say a little bit. David Kinman obviously had a bit of draft for some of his stint, and El Nabi had absolutely none. So now is time for Burke and Ross to really push, and we'll see if Burke decides to come around this time. He's just coming into the bus stop now, but Luke Harvey and Corey Preston, who have been having a little bit of a go of it for the last few laps. Corey Preston right now in a very good position to try and make a move. Kind of just makes a bit of a half attempt to Luke Harvey into running a bit deep there. Looks like it could have worked. Harvey carrying some really poor mid-corner speed there and not having a great exit. And Corey Preston's going to have a lot of overspeed as they come over the start-finish line. And he'll have to make a decision now as to what he wants to do. Although that TTR Commodore of Luke Harvey looking very quick in a straight line. But you can see now Corey starting to pull in as Blacklock just up ahead of them came into the pits. And unfortunately for Preston, not quite enough speed at the end of that straight to really make anything work, and taking a very unique line through turn number 1 there. That's not one I've seen in a long time, but looking very effective on Luke Harvey there. He's now right up the back, but just not quite able to do anything with it as it stands.
Yeah, absolutely at the moment, but Luke Harvey just struggling a lot with tires once again, so we'll wait and see how that goes. But interesting that Wayne Burke at the moment actually didn't respond on that last lap around. I really thought he would, and the lap time he set in clean air compared to what he was doing behind El Nabi was considerably slower. So I don't know. I think for these Synergy Sim Racing cars, even though they've been fuel saving and they have so much, they should have a little bit more fuel in reserve, I'm not sure about them staying out much longer. Of course, they will have to take perhaps a little bit less fuel in their stop when they, of course, the fuel burns slower as the fuel load goes down. But I don't know. I think this might be hurting them, especially with El Nabi now on new tires.
Yeah, I think you're right, but I think it's a questionable decision as to these guys staying out any longer. I really feel like these guys should be pitting right now. Even though Burke has pulled a little bit of a gap on his teammate Ross in these last few laps, they're going to be losing a massive amount of time to Forzan, who's been looking very strong out front. and also has some fresh tires. So Wayne Burke is now coming into pit lane, using as little track as he can to get to that line, cutting across the pit entry there, and Jordan Ross is in too, as well as Harvey. But Preston goes around, and Harvey's looped it coming into the pit lane. He's lost it big time. He's going to have to do a flick spin, and that is going to lose him a bunch of time. And presumably, if Preston can dive in quick enough, he'll have that position sorted, no problem. Wild stuff there for Luke Harvey. But we're looking now for Jordan Ross and Wayne Burke. Where do they file out in this whole scenario? Wayne's still on the jacks in his pit stall. Revs are up. He's out. And it looks like Forzan is just coming through turn number 1 now. So this is going to be very close. And I would say, having a look at it right now, that Wayne Burke has done just enough to get it done. And he's going to have to defend into turn number 1, though. He's going to have to cut right across the track, unless he doesn't have time, and Forzan's there on the inside. He's going to try and push him up the circuit as much as he can, but doing a very good job is Wayne Burke to get that traction down and not be intimidated by the man behind him, who has been so fast in the early stage of this race. And coming down into the International Horseshoe, Wayne Burke covers it off nicely, but these guys are going to be on very soon, as Wayne has to warm up his tires still a little bit, but he's got that track position now, and most of the infield completed means that he's pretty much assured that position. And he may, it's hard to say now if these guys are going to have to worry about fuel to the end, if one guy's got more fuel than the other, but presumably for the time being, that is job done for Wayne Burke, and a nice job indeed. We can see now Forzan El Nabi coming back with the speed of that Trick Sim Sports Commodore under his right foot, and just backing out of it. I think he knows that the best place to go is after the bus stop, because that run down into turn 1 is so much longer, and there's no real way to respond. So he's going to try and go this time, and you can see now those headlights just coming up meter by meter on Wayne Burke. Wayne will presumably try and hold the inside, but Forzan now just backed out of it again. So we're seeing a lot of people backing out of these moves at the moment, and not able to get up by the end of the straight into turn number 1. So Wayne Burke uses strategy to his advantage, and he currently has the lead of this race.
Yep, for now. And I'm very surprised it actually panned out that way, but a great strategy call in the end for Wayne Burke and the Synergy Sim Racing crew to get themselves out ahead. Luke Harvey still trying to make up ground after that moment in the pit lane. And to just show how much that incident has hurt him, he's going to be coming out of Leon Tander, who's just coming out of the pit lane now. Might be a little bit close, but Tander will have that just about sorted. So that just shows how much that mistake really hurt him. Because, of course, you can make up a 10th a lap maybe on the racetrack, but you can so easily lose seconds when it comes to a pit stop. And that's exactly what's happened. And Wayne Burke already pulling out a bit of a margin on Forzan El Nabi. That's a very strong first lap on new tyres for Wayne Burke. And I'm surprised by the margin he's pulled. So he's definitely trying to break that draft at the moment. But it might be a little bit too difficult to do. As we wait and see if Corey Preston will come into the pits on this time around. Of course, he hasn't came in yet. Still our race leader. But he is actually losing time relative to Ross Rizzo behind as well. So might be time for Preston to dive into the pits, and he agrees with that statement as he dives in very hot. Don't loop it like Luke Harvey. You have so much to gain, and he's almost done the exact same thing.
Yeah, very, very close. He almost took out that cone while he was at it as well, but a good job there from Corey Preston to hold on to it. And I was just looking at the pit times as you were talking about the time lost by Luke Harvey. He was on average about 6 to 7 seconds slower than some of the fastest cars through the pit lane. So as you were saying, tenths can be found on the racetrack, but 6 seconds was lost in the pit lane at least for Luke Harvey there. True. And yeah, El Nabi's got the overspeed coming into turn number 1, and Wayne Burke maybe goes under again, not quite, but is very, very close, has some nice traction. Will he fire it down the inside of the International Horseshoe? He'll have to be very brave, and the attitude of that car says that he's not going to try anything at this stage. But yeah, Forzan doing a great job there, just not bailing out of it this time, and going right round the outside into turn number 1. So Forzan El Nabi retains, or he moves up to where he's been sitting for most of this race, and Wayne Burke now going to have to pull something else to make it work. But those Synergy Sim racing cars have been looking fast in a straight line. And now that fuel saving isn't such a problem for him, we could see him possibly being a little more aggressive than he was in this in the early first stint of this race. And we can see now he has every intention of trying to pull everything that he can to get past Farzan Al Nabi, using his traction to intimidate him as they come out of turn number 6. And I think that he'll hold station as they come into the bus stop here. As we said, it's very easy to re-overtake if you get overtaken coming into the bus stop. So he does fall in behind and will try and get a nice run through the bus stop here, which he does right on the tail of Farzan Al Nabi. But you don't want to pass too quickly, because that might give Farzan the slipstream back and he might be able to make something else work. So just after they come onto the oval is the best time. And we got something happening further back in the field, Bo.
Luke Harvey and Corey Preston were going at it, but I'm just more shocked that Corey Preston is even behind Luke Harvey. So Corey Preston clearly not having an issue at some point on this circuit. Maybe that was just staying so long on those old tires compared to everyone else. So Corey Preston has not made any gain at all on Luke Harvey, despite the error. Now comes under pressure from Leon Tander, who fires it to the inside and has so much more pace as Wayne Burke finds his way through on Farzan Al Nabi now. So these guys changing positions just about every corner as Brian Borg finds his way out of the pit lane as well. And Ross Rizzo is going to come out right in the middle of this train potentially as well. So Luke Harvey, all of a sudden, with that little issue in the pit stop, he could have had a massive gap on all these guys. Now finds himself in a 4-car tango.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you make a mistake like that. But as we saw before, Wayne Burke and Farzan Al Nabi trading places once again. And it wouldn't surprise me if, Wayne kind of wanted a bit of this to happen as well. Let his teammate Jordan Ross kind of creep up on the back of these guys if they're battling a little bit, and he'll have some team support up the front of that field. So the lap times right now don't suggest that, actually, Jordan Ross was the fastest car around the track the last time round. So, and he's only about, he's about 3.5 seconds off these guys. So if they can fight for the next few laps and Jordan can plug away and take away close to half a second a lap, he will catch these guys by the end of the race. And Wayne will have that support, but it just depends on how much Farzan Al Nabi wants to play that game, and if they want to keep trading positions, or if one of them just wants to chill behind and wait until the end. But Farzan Al Nabi coming up again and rubbing the bumper of the Synergy Sim racing car, but just doesn't quite have the speed at the end to take it into turn number 1. So Wayne Burke not having to worry this time around.
This is almost beginning to pan out almost like an Indy 500 style race, where you don't want to be that car leading on that last lap, because the slipstream is so effective around here that if you are behind, you will most likely just be able to get the grip and run onto the oval and then carry that speed all the way through. So it'll be very interesting to see how this battle does play out, like you said, because Farzan has a lot to lose at this point if he does start fighting Wayne Burke. That's going to bring Jordan Ross right back into this fight. So we'll see how that pans out. But another factor they do have to look out for just potentially soon is they're actually closing in on Craig Jones, who is still yet to pit in this race. So if Craig Jones wants to, of course, he's fighting in his own race. I'm not sure where he was, qualified in 21st, but he wants to just gain time on the opponents he's driving against in his own little fight, whether that's outside the top 10 or inside the top 10. He does not have to give way to Wayne Burke or Farzan Al Nabi if they do indeed catch him, which they are doing by about almost 2 seconds a lap as well. So that could be a very interesting dynamic if Craig Jones' intentions are to run this quite long.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, don't know if you were, but I was teammates with Craig Jones as he actually just clips the wall on the exit of the bus stop there. But he's a very heads-up driver, and I think he'll have taken those things into consideration. I very much doubt that he would put up much of a challenge to the cars coming through if they are the leaders, but we're not going to have to find out, because Craig Jones has now hit the pit lane and just manages to pull up before he hits those cones. But I think that he probably would have had more sense than to fight it anyway. But Farzan Al Nabi still unable to find a way past Wayne Burke now, and you can see, as we have seen so many times throughout not just this race but through this entire seasons, 2 very different approaches to different turns there. And turn 1 here is an exception. We saw Corey Preston taking a very alternate line that seems to work very well for the way his car's set up. And those two cars there of Burke and El Nabi proving that once again. Luke Harvey's made a mistake now. Yeah, and Leon Tander's going to try and go up the inside of the International Horseshoe. And Luke straightening up that exit, getting the power down. He doesn't have the preferred line, but he does have enough overspeed to clear Leon Tander before they come into the kink there. And now for the second horseshoe, and Corey Preston, who's had some good speed throughout this race, is looking for a way past Leon Tander as well and try to get back up to Luke Harvey, who he's been battling with for the most of this race. So that Synergy Sim racing car doing a good job to mix it up between those guys, because they were up in 4th and 5th earlier. So he's doing a very good job now, sitting in essentially 5th position, I believe, once we get Craig Jones cycling to the back of the pack. But very nice job there, and he's applying big pressure to Luke Harvey now, and might have a bit of a go down into turn 1 after they come through the bus stop here.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see as they fire their way out. It looks like an okay run, but a bit of a wiggle there for Tander on the exit, so Harvey could be able to hold on to that position all the way down this oval. And it might give Corey Preston a little bit of an opportunity, but he now does have a bit of aero damage as the lead changes once again in the favor of Fords. And El Nabi and Burke gets very sideways out of turn number 1 as well. So that's not going to do the Dunlops any favors at all. And it is something they have to be careful of, as Ross Rizzo now finds himself in a fight with that's Corey Preston, as it's actually 2x2 as well, as Tander up the inside of Harvey, and he gets that done. And Rizzo still trying to work for it on Preston, not able to do it. Has a good run though, but not at all the preferred line or overlap at all. So that fight will have to be thrown up with the white flag for now. And Rizzo will have to see if there's any more opportunities on this lap. But we'll wait and see as McKnight now finds himself in a fight with Thomas Hintz, who's trying to go around the outside, but might make himself a bit vulnerable. David Kinman, fortunately for Hinzy, Kinman just lights the rear tires up a little bit, and Hinzy can go back onto his charge with McKnight as they fire their way into this fast left-hander. The Dunlop's well and truly loaded up, and then into a hard braking zone, which makes it so easy to lock the inside front. And you can see McKnight not quite meeting at the apex where he would have liked, and Hinzy does, so a bit more confidence there. So McKnight might be a bit vulnerable in Hinzy's mind, but we'll wait and see how this goes onto the oval, as a lot of drivers are really choosing to keep their moves for the oval, which I think at the end of the day is quite a smart move.
Yeah, I mean, when you've got cars that have higher downforce, there are a couple of extra considerations that you can take when you're going through those corners side by side. But in these V8 Supercars, they just have that potential to, you know, snap so quickly. And I think a lot of these guys really want to make sure that they're coming home with the car all in one piece, as the lead changes again with Wayne Burke slicing his way through on Forzan El Nabi once more. And Jordan Ross has, in the last few laps, he's been making inroads 0.2 of a second to Wayne Burke last time around, and 0.3 on Forzan El Nabi. So he's going to be moving up only 2.5 seconds behind these guys now. And when we mentioned it just after the pits, he was at about 4 laps ago, he was 3.5 or 3.7 seconds behind. So, and last time around as well, able to gain a little bit more time.
Car spun at turn 1, just about almost got collected by Chris Coxhead there, and they're going to go side by side in a very big melee, which almost got involved with Brenton Hobson, who was trying to play it cautiously. I was just looking at Hobbo, who was playing it very cautious, just very much getting out of the way of everyone, only to see the All-Star Motorsports car parked in the middle of the road. So what happened there? And we're having a look at a replay for you now, and it's contact with a 21 car. David Kinman is, yes, heading into turn 1. It looks like they both were just locking up a bit wide from the apex, and Kinman just gave the smallest little hit to Hinzy, and it was enough to send him around. And Sam Blacklock, who was multiple laps down, almost got involved in that and made Hinzy's day a lot worse as well. So that's unfortunate for those guys, as the 2 race leaders head their way onto the main straight once again. And last time around at the start-finish line, it was 0.02 of a second, so incredibly close. And we'll see if they can get a little bit closer this time, as El Nabi gets right underneath the rear wing of the Synergy Sim Racing car, just trying to practice, just in case he is behind on the last lap. And if he is behind on the last lap, he's not going to be close enough in that state of mind to make a move. So El Nabi just trying to figure out what he needs to do to get past Wayne Burke on the last lap, as Leon Tander did in fact lose a spot to Luke Harvey, and Corey Preston might just be about to lose one to Ross Rizzo.
Yeah, they're getting all the drafts on and making all the moves happen, and Ross Rizzo gonna go for the outside line on Corey Preston, but not quite able to make it work. And Leon Tander and Luke Harvey have traded places a couple of times as well. So these guys are gonna keep on going. But something I just noticed on that last lap is that Jordan Ross made up 0.7 of a second on Forzan El Nabi and Wayne Burke. He's now within 1.6, and that's going to be a big boost for Wayne Burke if he can get his teammate up there. And at that rate, he's going to be within the, in fact, he's within the slipstream, I would imagine, just barely of Forzan El Nabi. So he could be well up on those guys in the next couple of laps, and we still have 10 laps to go here at the beautiful Daytona road course. And Corey Preston getting all sorts of locked up, or crossed up rather, as he came out of turn number 6 there, and that's going to kill his run that he was looking for on Leon Tander, and might cause him to become a little bit susceptible to the Trick Sim Sports car of Ross Rizzo, as Ross now building up some overspeed. He's going to go side by side into the bus stop, and Corey Preston just going to bail out of it and let him take the line. I think they both realize that they need to keep in that draft, but up the front, Wayne Burke and Ross Rizzo, pardon me, Forzan El Nabi almost coming together as they just enter the final section of the track there, and very, very close quarters for those guys. Forzan El Nabi now going for a bit of an over-under on Wayne Burke. Got some good exit speed, but not quite enough to do anything unless he wants to try and fire it up the inside of the horseshoe. He's not going to be able to, though, just a little bit far back. And now, who is that right behind? Within a second of the car ahead, it's Jordan Ross, and he's going to have something to say about his teammate, or possibly even himself, being on the top spot of that podium today. And he could really come into play in these next few laps with that draft effect on Forzan El Nabi now.
Yeah, absolutely. If you thought taking 0.7 of a second out was impressive, he's just gone and taken 0.9 of a second out on Wayne Burke and 0.8 on Forzan El Nabi. So Jordan Ross has a point to prove right now, and he's definitely making that point very effectively as Wayne Burke is at the front of the field at the moment. El Nabi had a bit of a shot into the International Horseshoe, but in the end actually lost a bit more time than he would have liked. So won't expect any position changes on this lap. But we say that when Forzan El Nabi did in fact start this lap in the lead. It's just about chopping and changing it every second at the moment, which is awesome to see, as still they're waiting and trying to size each other up. Wayne Burke quite cautious, I've got to say. Through the bus stop there, he was not throwing the car in at all, and very minimal aggression to try and break the draft of El Nabi. So I said there might not be a lead change on the start-finish straight this time around. I think I'm about to be proved wrong here, Zach.
Yeah, well, we will see. Forzan peels out to the right-hand side. He's going to try and go the long way again, and has a little bit of overspeed on Wayne Burke. Wayne has to travel less space, though, and he's going to take the inside line once again. And Forzan going for that really wide line that we saw Corey Preston using earlier, and just getting some really straight exit, which allows him to put the traction down very nicely. Doesn't go for the look down the inside as they come through the horseshoe. But now he is in a massive sandwich, and Jordan Ross, he could be the one to steal all the thunder here and do both of them in on one lap. That'd be pretty spectacular to see, and we hope to see something like that. But now we have the top 3 cars all within a second of each other. Just 0.7 of a second separates these 3 cars, and when we come round after the bus stop, I reckon it's going to be very hard to tell who's going to be in position number 1 as they come through turn number 1. But it's amazing that these guys are so far ahead of the field. Luke Harvey, the next car back in 4th position, 17.5 seconds behind.
Yeah, that is a huge margin, especially when we did see Harvey and Preston involved in that fight for the win very early on. Of course, it was the big top 5 scrap at the start, and now it's most definitely the big 3 fighting it out at the moment for this win. But Luke Harvey has his own little troubles with Leon Tander and Ross Rizzo just behind as well. Corey Preston was in this fight, but looks to be a little bit slow on the straight line a little bit, and just beginning to lose the draft potentially as well. So Preston has to try and get some good laps in to make any kind of moves, as we have Leon Tander thinking about the inside of Luke Harvey into the bus stop, has to back out of it for now. As we go to the front of the field, because of course they're side by side heading towards the stripe. It was 200th last time around. Will it be any closer? It's going to be extremely close, but El Nabi going to comfortably get it. Wayne Burke out of the throttle on the start-finish straight, 600s, but all kinds of crossed up for El Nabi into turn number 1. So loose, just about going to pull it up, and Jordan Ross gets extremely close as well. He's got a fantastic shot now at taking away that second spot. Will he go for the dive into turn number 3? Thinks about it, thinks better of it, as Wayne Burke had a good opportunity there to pull a margin, but runs very deep into turn number 3, and El Nabi well and truly in the draft now through the entire infield. But this top 3 is as close as it's ever been, and we still have 7.5 laps to go. And this draft is going to be so crucial, it might as well be the Indy 500.
Yeah, I mean, it could very well be that the guy sitting in the 3rd spot just comes and takes it all home at the end with a big pull to the finish. But I mean, it could go either of these guys' ways. It could be El Nabi, it could be Burke, it could be Ross. I couldn't really tell you right now who I think is going to win this race, but I think all of them have an equal shot of winning it, and all of them have some very good pace in their respective cars. But I think that the advantage would have to go to Burke and Ross right now, given that they are teammates. I'm not sure if they are communicating, but presumably they would be, and they might be trying to orchestrate something here to try and put El Nabi on the back foot, try and maybe get Ross up into position number 2 and make a bit of a break for it. And they still have enough time to make something like that work, but if they do, they're going to have to make it happen pretty soon. El Nabi still has some good speed now. He has a lot of speed as they come down into turn number 1, but Ross has got some good speed on his teammate, maybe going to try and follow him through and kind of take that position away from El Nabi. He's not quite going to be able to do it, is Ross, but El Nabi does run very wide through the corner, and Ross doing a very nice and sensible job there of just getting out of the throttle a little bit and giving the spot to El Nabi, but he gets very crossed up as they come into the horseshoe there and almost losing it completely, and Ross almost following him through as well. So
good battle, but just behind as well, including Luke Harvey, Ross Rizzo, and also Leon Tander side by side, almost 3 wide into turn number 1. Now Harvey tries to fire it back up the inside of Leon Tander into turn number 3, and it does get the job done. Tander with no grip on the exit. Might even become a bit vulnerable to Ross Rizzo, but I was going to mention this battle because it was getting so tight, and I thought even a little bit of drama could potentially come of this, because these guys in particular are really beginning to get quite feisty now as they all close up on one another. Tander almost into the back of the Trans-Tasman Racing Commodore as well. So if we thought the battle pack for the win at the moment was quite feisty, this one for P number 5 is just as feisty as well, because they're really going at the moment, and we have to be careful because we are approaching that stage in the race where moves are going to start getting a little bit more risky. Drivers going to take a bit more liberty when it comes to fighting another driver, and we do have to be careful because we're racing at high speeds, and these walls do bite if it all goes wrong, as Tander thinks about the inside, gets covered off by Harvey, who holds the inside, but they will go side by side, and Tander very strong on the brakes, tries to go around the outside, side by side through the bus stop, does not work, and they've held each other so much on the exit. Harvey sideways as well. His exit is done. He's probably going to be the last car heading into turn number 1 at this rate, as Rizzo thinks about the outside, can't quite do it as well. And Jordan Ross has now got himself into P number 2. El Nabi struggling into turn number 1, can't hold it at the moment, and it's a Synergy Sim Racing 1 and 2 as it's side by side once again. Luke Harvey bump drafting Leon Tander into turn number 1, pulls out at the last second, or thinks about it, not able to do it. Another Trick Sim Sport car on the outside of turn number 1. Will he be able to do it any better than El Nabi? Not quite. Preston goes wide in the background, almost in the grass. Still side by side, though, between Rizzo and Harvey, who continues to get sideways. And, of course, we saw him have a spin in the pit lane. Maybe if he didn't take tyres, he would really be struggling with those at the moment. But these Trick Sim Sport cars not looking comfortable through turn number 1. And we've seen El Nabi lead so many laps to this race. But now, all of a sudden, these Synergy Sim Racing cars are coming very strong. And it's a Synergy Sim Racing 1 and 2 at the moment, Zach.
Yeah, well, I was talking about orchestrating something, and Jordan Ross pushed the hell out of his teammate Wayne Burke into turn number 1 and just followed him through on that inside line as El Nabi was kind of forced onto the outside line that he has been using for the last few circulations, but just not quite able to make it work enough that he couldn't let that car of Jordan Ross through. So now Jordan Ross has a slipstream ahead of him, and he's got one behind him, and he's probably going to try and play rear gunner here, unless the guys in Synergy Sim Racing have said that you're free to race. But looking at the way that the championship stands at the moment, with Wayne Burke sitting not significantly high, but a little higher, and El Nabi's now going to go round the outside, but they're going to go for it again and follow each other through on the inside of the Synergy Sim Racing cars. And you see how effective it is, forcing El Nabi onto the outside there. But Wayne Burke definitely not able to break away from these guys at all, and he's going to have to hold it steady until the end of this race. But as I was saying, Wayne Burke is higher in the championship standings than Jordan Ross. They have that to think about. They might be just thinking of the team picture. It would be good to have the championship in the hands of any of their team members. He's the top of the pack at the moment.
Oh, Ross Rizzo! Ross Rizzo has just about thrown it into the grass. He's lost the spot to Harvey now. Sorry to cut across you there, Zach, but I definitely thought Ross Rizzo was absolutely ruining his race there. Off into the tire wall, completely outbroke himself, almost into the back of Tanda as well. So a very lucky hold there from Ross Rizzo to keep it on the island, but now comes under a lot of pressure from Corey Preston, who continues just to lurk at the back of this battle pack, but doesn't have the straight line speed at the moment to make any moves stick.
Yeah, he was looking very, very wide there, but now Forzan El Nabi is trying to intimidate Jordan Ross into a mistake through this bus stop so that he can have an opportunity as they come down into turn one, which is a hot spot of the day. Unfortunately, he's not been able to make anything work, and he's got a pretty severe gap. With a double slipstream, he might be able to recuperate a little bit of that, but I don't think he'll be able to make anything work into turn one. But the pack behind them, Leon Tander, Luke Harvey, Ross Rizzo, Corey Preston, all looking good. But Jordan Ross is now challenging his teammate round the outside, and he's going to let him have it, is Wayne Burke. So no team orders involved. It's a free-for-all, and Jordan Ross now leads this race. Now, he's had some great pace catching these guys. Can he do anything to extend an advantage and pull a bit of a gap? Hasn't possibly been using as much of his tires on this stint, not having to fight lap after lap. And Wayne Burke just starting to drop away a little bit, and El Nabi likewise as well. So it's all to play for here for Jordan Ross. If he can get a bit of a gap going, he might make something work, but they are looking very feisty as well behind. Ross Rizzo having to defend a little bit from Corey Preston, but now looking very close once again on Luke Harvey, and it's just not stopping between these two battle packs here, Bo.
Absolutely not. Wayne Burke almost into the back bumper of Jordan Ross. They head their way onto the oval as well. So any team orders in Synergy Sim Racing, like you said, definitely thrown out the window. But we have to remember as well, Forzan El Nabi pitted 2 laps earlier than these guys in front. And I think he's really beginning to struggle with that now. We didn't think tires would be too much of a talking point here at Daytona, of course, because the slipstream really does allow you to, stay in play. But he doesn't have the tire life to pull the car up into turn 1 anymore, it looks like. And he's really struggling. So perhaps he's going to just try and play it a bit more timid over the next few laps, try and get a bit more tire life back into his tires, and just try and get a little bit of salvage compared to Jordan Ross and Wayne Burke, as Jordan actually going high on the oval just to break the slipstream of Wayne Burke, who has to be careful as El Nabi just coming out on the straights as well. So they're almost, they're all in different lanes on the track, but none of them are side by side. And for probably the first time in probably 8 or 9 laps, they're not side by side into turn 1. But this is going to get very interesting. But if they're not side by side into turn 1, Leon Tander and Luke Harvey might just be, as Luke Harvey has a fantastic run, actually might be able to clear this before they get to the braking zone. So Harvey back into P number 4, and this fight is really getting a lot tighter now as Ross Rizzo tries to get a nice run through turn 1 and 2, but not able to set anything up on Leon Tander as Corey Preston continues to struggle. He's there just to pick up scraps at this point, unfortunately. It was a race where he did look like he has very good pace, not able to do it as Kinman and Knight go side by side into turn 1, and that is a massive overshoot from Kinman, and a very, very nice undercut there from Jacob Knight, just to slip underneath and get the job done. head back up to our leaders though, Zach, because we're onto the oval once again. Jordan Ross has a nice advantage, but Wayne Burke probably not too comfy in P number 2.
Yeah, I was interested seeing Ross running that really high line on the banking earlier, later in the last lap. It's in real life, you'd probably take that middle line if you're in a road car, but on the iRacing surface, it's typically much faster no matter what, just to hug that inside. And I know he wants to give up a bit of a draft to his competitors behind, but I think he's probably making a bit of a mistake by running that line there. We will see. It's also meaning that Forzan El Nabi's getting a bit more of a run on his teammate than they would probably like, but you can just see that he is losing a little bit to them, but possibly not as much as if they were getting a slipstream, and maintains that position into turn number 1. All of them stay in the same position, and he's doing a good job, but Wayne Burke is looking very good. And once again, as we come down into turn 1, there's more action behind because Leon Tander and Ross Rizzo are side by side. Rizzo had a nice run coming down into turn number 1, gonna have to hold it round the outside on the tough part of the racetrack. He's gonna try and carry lots of mid-corner speed through the outside line of that corner. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like it's quite enough, and he's gonna have to tuck in back behind Leon Tander, who's doing a good job still up in position number 5 there. He must have and Preston, I'm just having a look. Preston has just run off at the International Horseshoe there, he's just, wow. Big moment for Preston, and actually did a very good job to pull it up as well as he did, considering how wild that moment was. But he's now dropped back considerably and is not going to have an opportunity to fight for 4th position. But up at the lead again, and they're just coming through the bus stop now. So are they going to run the same lines that they ran last time, or is Wayne Burke maybe going to pick up that slipstream even if Jordan Ross runs a little high? And it seems like he will, and Jordan's just going to take that inside line once again, because if his teammate's stealing the slipstream, well, there's not much point in running it high. But all of them are there, but very spread out, as a little more than we have seen the last few laps. But now the white flag waves. Jordan Ross is in the lead, followed by Wayne Burke and Forzan El Nabi. The 2 Synergy Sim racing cars out front have it all to lose, but they've been looking very strong in the second half of this race. Can Jordan Ross pull off his first win in the iRacing Strength of Field Monday night race here on the iRacing Esports Network? We'll have to wait and see. He's been looking very strong, and he has some good tires, but Wayne Burke and Forzan El Nabi are not going to want to give it up easy.
No, not at all. This is going to be a shootout all the way to the final banking of this Daytona International Circuit. It's been 33 laps of thrilling action so far. How will this 34th lap shape out? Ross has looked very strong in this second half of the race, but it all comes down to what kind of exit Wayne Burke can get out of this hairpin, and then what can he do out of the bus stop, as Jordan Ross does not meet the apex at all. He gets an okay run out of the corner, so the straight line is okay, but just a little bit more vulnerable than he would have liked. Didn't get in the correct contact patch where the grip on the circuit is. So advantage Wayne Burke in the slipstream, just 1/10 of a second by 1/10 of a second. He will close on his Synergy Sim Racing teammate. It's a 1 and 2, but will they risk that 1 and 2 for the victory themselves and potentially gift this to Forzan El Nabi out of the bus stop? A great run from Jordan Ross, and all he can do now is duck and weave, try and get something, but the speed is good for Wayne Burke, closing just a little bit, gets into the slipstream now as Jordan Ross moves down to the low line, and this could potentially be a photo finish as Wayne Burke in the slipstream trying to close, having to go below the yellow line. El Nabi thinks about it. Wayne Burke might just do this at the death, and he's got it by 200ths of a second. The top 3 within a 1/10, a fantastic race, and Wayne Burke leads a Synergy Sim Racing photo finish, 1st and 2nd. Can you believe it?
That was
and it's not
amazing.
over P number 4.
And Luke Harvey and Ross Rizzo, and it looks like Harvey's just managed to take home position.
No, Rizzo.
Oh, Rizzo got it. Oh, wow. So Rizzo over the line by 0.02 of a second once again. Almost identical. And we've got more cars still coming over the line.
Jay McKnight makes contact in the straight line as well. It's going to be 3 wide potentially. McKnight will just about get it. Hobson, contact after the
big
finish.
crash after the line. That's massive.
They got qualified. Someone got qualified.
DQ'd. But I think they made. I think it was Hobbo, but I think he's made it over the line enough that it's not going to make a difference. Yes, but
they were 3 wide. There's only 3 cars within 45 seconds of a bracket. Did someone might have got disqualified in that battle? I'm not too sure. The results playing up just a little bit.
Yeah, Hobson's now registered as a lap down. So he only relinquishes, I think, 1 or 2 positions there, but still going to end up coming home a lap down, and that's going to be a big hit to his safety rating, I'm sure. But an absolutely crazy finish here from Wayne Burke and Jordan Ross and Forzan El Nabi. Less than a 10th covers your top 3 cars here at the Daytona circuit. That is absolutely incredible.
You're not wrong. That is one of the best finishes we've ever seen in the series. That was right down to the wire between 2 teammates, and Forzan El Nabi just waiting, looking for any opportunity to steal the results. We'll get your results up on screen, and as you said, top 3, Wayne Burke, Jordan Ross, and Forzan El Nabi, whichever order you like to put them in. You cannot fault them for a fantastic display, but it is Wayne Burke that will take the spoils ahead of Jordan Ross and El Nabi, who led so much of the early stages of this race, relegated to P number 3. Ross Rizzo would steal it at the death for P number 4, ahead of Luke Harvey, and Leon Tander put on a great fight throughout the entire race to take home P number 6. Brian Borg and Corey Preston, 7th and 8th after Preston really fell apart in the last few laps, and Borg was able to eventually get him on the last lap. Jacob Knight in P number 9 with David Kinman, P number 10.
Yeah, we had Thomas Hens, doing a great job up 9 positions into P number 11, even after having a bit of a spin into turn number 1 there. Greg Sharp made it home in position 12 with Jamie McKnight in 13th. Chris Coxhead had a bit of a struggle throughout that race and came home in 14th position. Steve Jansen came home in 15th. Brenton Hobson, unfortunately, disqualified as they were coming over the line for 16th position. Also, Craig Jones having an issue as well, coming home in 17th. And then starts our relatively long list of non-finishers tonight after that big accident at turn number 1 and a couple of subsequent accidents as well. Michael Taliancic, Calvin Fuerdant, Sam Blacklock, Tom McMillan, Riley Blythe, Brett Loxton, and Bart Martinovich there I'm not even sure started the race. So a lot of attrition in that race, and a couple of championship contenders that would have been great to see up the front. But nonetheless, it was an absolutely fantastic race with overtakes pretty much occurring every lap. And that little 3-car train for first, second, and third, and the one behind for 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th was absolutely fantastic throughout that race.
Yeah, absolutely. That race had a little bit of everything going on at every lap, and that's almost becoming the norm in this series. It's pretty incredible to see just how competitive these guys are really beginning to take this championship. And one thing we didn't touch on too much in the race, Zach, is how much this could potentially shake up the championship, because first and second the championship currently is Brett Loxton and Sam Blacklock. They walk away tonight with a P number 20 and a P number 23.
Yeah, that's pretty shocking. And if either of those guys have had another relatively bad race, which I can remember Sam, I think, has had a couple that he would have definitely preferred to have performed better in throughout this season. The results have to come. He has to be doing better than he has been all season right now to really be able to keep it up there in the top part of that championship standings. And that's not going to help him. And it's definitely not going to help Brett Loxton either, who's another person who's very, very in there for that championship. Wayne Burke, on the other hand, doing an excellent job. And even Jordan Ross is quite high in the championship as well. And Forzan El Nabi sitting very well also. So it's definitely mixed the championship standings up quite a lot. And I am very much looking forward to the next race, which I believe is Monza. And that's going to, I think, scramble up this championship a little bit more even.
Yeah, absolutely. Monza's going to be a very interesting one. Of course, it's where all the slipstreaming pack racing will happen. And well, we saw pack racing here. Monza could just be even more interesting with that huge braking zone into turn number 1. But before we do get to Monza, we also have on Tuesday on V8 Online, we have the Australian Sprint Car Series at Eldora. And that championship has been getting very hotly contested lately, with drivers like Bob King really beginning to make a name for themselves in that series and fighting at the top level. On Wednesday, the Sprint Series Australia takes to Laguna Seca for the first of the GT3 sprint races. 2 20-minute fights are sure to provide quite a fair bit of action, and I'll definitely be trying to make a bit of redemption after last week. AOSC heads to Monza on Friday, just ahead of a big week of Monza for the V8 Supercars. That's going to be a very interesting one, and a bit of a prelude before we head for the V8 Supercars Online Premier Series on the iRacing Esports Network at Monza as well. How will the championship shake up? And whilst we run through these, we will get another replay up on screen of that finish, because that was a classic that has to be seen again and again to be believed. But Zach, just looking at the replays we're seeing on screen at the moment, is this not a reason to subscribe to the iRacing Esports Network?
I think it's not only a reason to subscribe and also hit that notification button. I think it's an excellent reason to just absolutely smash the hell out of that like button if you haven't done that as well already, because where else in the world can you consistently find racing as good as this? And tonight, with the top 3 cars separated by 0.082 of a second, that's got to be like-worthy, guys. And thank you very much for always supporting us. We do appreciate everything you do. And that's liking these videos and subscribing is going to help us take the world of sim racing to another level, hopefully, in the near future. So thank you very much for your support, guys. But from us here at the V8s Online, broadcasted on the iRacing Esports Network, thank you very much for joining us at Daytona Road Circuit for the iRacing V8 Supercars official series. We'll see you next time, and have a good night.
3, 2, 1.
Last year I was sitting at a desk as a sales manager, and now I'm official McLaren F1 simulated test driver.
So it's 1.4 behind.
This opportunity is huge.
That's it, 46 watts. That's faster than the factory McLaren driver. And he's done 6 laps.
Let's go race.
The following is a presentation of the iRacing Esports Network.